Hello, Algebra 2 students. It's Miss Taz. I know you're so excited to hear me at home. It's not one of those YouTube videos you thought it was going to be. It's actually me. So, we ran our mouths today and we were watching little videos of fountains and looking at the parabolic shapes of them and whatnot. So we didn't get done what I wanted to get done. So that's why we're doing this time. So you need to have your paper out. You need to be taking notes as you go through. So this is where we ended here today in class, and we learned that we have this new form. It's called the vertex form here, and we're going to write this down in a few minutes and title it and everything. But what we learned is when this here is positive, it makes this one negative, but this negative remains the same. And so we're just going to go through now graphing like you have been, but using it in vertex form instead. So that's the only difference here is we are going to be using vertex form. So here's vertex form. The other form that we have been using for a quadratic equation is actually called the standard form. Okay, so I don't know what I was writing there. But the standard form for a quadratic equation. And at any time, if you feel as though you need to pause, you want to rewind, whatever, you go ahead and you do that. Okay? Okay. All right. So this is standard form, which we've been doing lately. Here is the vertex form. And in this vertex form, you will find the vertex of it, which is h, comma, k. So this is written wrong here. Let's fix that. I can see that right there. That needs to be an H. Alright, so H, comma, K. So problem number 1, we're going to go through, and problem number 1 is going to be y equals x minus 3 squared minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to go through all the processes we did before. Now, first and foremost, we always find the y-intercept. So the y-intercept, actually, you know what? Let's not do that first, because that's actually harder, and it's not -1, so I don't want you to think that it is, okay? So let's do the vertex form, because that's actually the easiest. So let's do the vertex. So the h here, right, it's minus 3, so the vertex is actually 3 and -1. So we have that right away. So we can graph the 3 and -1. You'll just have to do it on regular sketch, just regular paper, no big deal. Alright, so next, let's do our x-intercept. And remember, Ben asked what order do you have to go in. You don't have to go in any order, but... So I'm going to take this function. If you remember your x-intercepts, that's when y equals 0. So I'm going to set this function equal to 0. So we have 0 equals x minus 3 squared minus 1. Remember those quadratics we were solving? Yup, this is y. Alright, so we add 1 to both sides. We have 1 equals this. What do we do now? Yup, we take the square root. So we take the square root of both sides. This side is just an x minus 3. This side, the square root of 1, is actually positive and -1. Alright, now we're going to add 3 and add 3. So we now have 3 plus n minus 1 equals x. So we get two answers. 3 plus 1 equals x, right, which is 4. Sorry. And we have 3 minus 1 equals x, which equals 2. So here are our two x-intercepts. So we have one at 2 and we have one at 4. Oh, look, little smiley face, little nose, eyes. I just need a smile. No. Okay, so there's the process of the x-intercept. So our x-intercepts, we end up with x equals 2 and x equals 4. So I'm going to race through this because I need to make sure I have enough room. Alright, you can pause and go back anytime you need to. So we have x equals 2 and x equals 4. Okay, now the y-intercept, we'll do the y-intercept now. Doesn't matter what order. So the y-intercept, we know that x equals 0 for the y-intercept. So we have y equals, plug and chug, 0 minus 3 squared minus 1. It's going to give us 9 minus 1, so it's going to give us 8, right? So the y-intercept is 8. So I believe that's right there. And what else didn't we find? The axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry. If you recall from class, we were going over this. We said the axis of symmetry has to deal with the vertex, the x value of the vertex, right? That's this guy right here. So the axis of symmetry is a vertical line that runs through the center of your graph. So here's x equals 3. So our graph, and remember these are symmetrical, so here's our axis of symmetry. It's just some imaginary line that runs down the middle. This is x equals 3. And then the graph itself is just coming down. Let's see how good I can do this, right? And then it's a symmetrical graph, so it's going to hit there too, and then come back up. Okay? So, there we go. We found all that. That was a little bit quicker than some of the stuff we were doing in class. Oh, you can tell them at school. You just heard the bell ring. All right, so problem number 2. Problem number 2 here, we have x plus 1 squared. Did we just do that same one? No, good. Okay. All right, so we have x plus 1 squared plus 2. Okay, so same one, same kind of options going through. This one's also going to be up. You know what? Let's change this one. Let's make it a negative here, so we can just see it upside down. Okay, so the vertex, that'll be the first thing that we find because it's the easiest thing. Remember, it's h comma k. So the vertex h here, this is, Miss Taz wrote that wrong there. Alright, so it should be x minus h. Let me fix it. Give me a second. X minus h. Okay, so here we have a plus 1. So this is always the opposite. Okay, so your h right here is going to be a negative 1, and your 2 remains the same. Okay, you'll get your papers back. You can take a look at those next class. So here's our vertex, which is negative 1 comma 2, and I'm doing things out of order this time. So this is the axis of symmetry. Remember, it comes directly from this, so that's x equals negative 1. Our y-intercept, remember, x equals 0. X equals 0. So we're going to plug that in. That's f of x, or y, negative, times 0 plus 1 squared plus 2. Alright, so it's going to give us, what is that going to equal? That'll be 1, negative 1, so that's 1. So our y-intercept is 1. And then we have our x-intercept. So we're going to solve them the same way as we did on the previous side. So remember, this is when y equals 0. Set the function equal to 0, and let's solve. So, subtract 2. We have negative 2 equals negative times x plus 1 squared. You need to get this isolated and all by itself, so there's really a negative 1 hanging out here. So I'm going to divide by negative 1 to get 2 equals x plus 1 squared. Okay? And at this point, we can take the square root. We're going to get some funky answers on this one. So we can take the square root. We can take the square root. Remember, over here, we're going to do a plus and a minus. A plus and a minus. So we're going to have plus and minus the square root of 2. What's the square root of 2? How many of you said 1? It's not 1, silly. Okay, so then over here we just have our x plus 1 once we do that. There we go. So we get x plus 1. Subtract your 1, and you're going to get some funky little numbers. So you're going to get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 2 equals x. So we have 2 different answers, and we're going to get decimal solutions. Okay, I want to grab a calculator, so hold on here a second. I'm going to walk over and get one. Alright, so get your calculators out. You should be working along with me with this. So here we go. We're going to get negative 1 plus There's my pen. Negative 1 plus the square root of 2 equals x. I just wrote square root of x. Alright, so negative 1 plus the square root of 2. So what does that equal? Negative 1 plus the square root of 2. That's approximately 0.4. And then we're going to do negative 1 minus the square root of 2. That's from all up here. That's where the plus and minuses come from. Equal x. So negative 1 minus the square root of 2, because I can't do those in my head, gives me negative 2.4. Okay? Negative 2.4. So, your homework, besides watching this and taking notes, you need to finish graphing this problem, and then I have one more for you. So problem number 3, you need to do y equals negative times x minus 4 squared minus 4. You need to find all the pieces, the vertex, you need to find the axis of symmetry, the y-intercept, the x-intercept, and you need to graph it. Okay? So watch the video, finish graphing number 2, and complete number 3. I will see you in class on Monday. Peace.